Welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast, where we're working to help you call a truce with your anxiety. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here's your host, Elizabeth Cush, LCPC.
Welcome back to the Woman Worriers podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate all the listens and the subscribes and the reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can find us at womanwarriors.com, Woman Worriers on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can download my free meditation guide for worried women on the website. Go to womanwarriors.com. There is a link there at the top of the page. Click on that and get your free guide. I will also be hosting mindfulness groups here in Annapolis for all those worried women who live locally. If you're interested and live in Maryland, you also can connect with me, and I will be hosting an online group as well. So if you would like to be a part of those groups, give me a shout out to me, working toward doing a broader version of the group online as we go forward as a more of a coaching than therapy group. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me as well. You can find my contact information at the end of the podcast in the show notes, womanwarriors.com. I've extended the deadline for entries for the 2-book giveaway in celebration of the podcast's 2-year anniversary. So 2 people will be randomly selected to win 2 books. The first book is The Mindful Day, Practical Ways to Find Focus, Calm, and Joy from Morning to Evening by Lori J. Cameron. The other book is The Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook, a proven way to accept yourself, build inner strength, and thrive by Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer. Both books have been exceedingly helpful for me in my journey through self-acceptance, self-love, self-compassion, as well as mindful awareness in daily living. So I hope you'll enter. You can send me an email at ecush135@gmail.com with happy anniversary in the subject line. Or you can contact me through my website, progressioncounseling.com or womanwarriors.com. Click the contact button and shoot me an email there with the same subject heading. I hope you'll enter. As of the release of this episode, the coronavirus is wreaking havoc out there in the world. Well, and the response to the coronavirus is here in Maryland. Public schools just got closed, and I'm a little worried about the impact the virus is going to have on our communities and our businesses and the world. So I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're taking care of yourself if you're sick. Know that my thoughts and my concern and my prayers and my worries are with all of you out there in the world. This week, my guest is Nikki Kenward. She is an author, an international healthcare educator, an up-ledger craniosacral therapist, a yoga teacher, and a yoga as medicine therapist, and a poet. And today, we're going to be talking about her book, It's All in Your Gut. And so we're going to be talking about the connection between your brain and what she calls your second brain, which is our gut and our whole digestive system. So I'm very excited about this because I know how often my clients will say to me when they're anxious or stressed or overwhelmed that it's not just impacting them like feeling like a tightness in their chest or tension in their shoulders or a nervousness, that there's actually like it impacts their stomach and their digestive system, and maybe they're having irritable bowel syndrome or feel like they are nauseous all the time. And so I'm very interested to talk to Nikki about this connection between our brain and our gut. I want to apologize for the inferior sound quality in my conversation with Nikki Kenward. Unfortunately, there are times when I'm recording and I don't double check the microphone input connections, and I guess I didn't. So pretty sure I'm recording off my laptop microphone, which means there's a lot of background noise. I do feel that this interview was important to share, so I hope you will bear with the crappy sound quality and hang in there and listen. And I try my best to provide the best sound quality, but life happens and sometimes we make mistakes. We're human. So let's move on and let's get started. Hi, Nikki, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Elizabeth. Delighted to be here.
Oh, I'm really excited to talk to you about your book. But before we get to that, if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and why you do the work that you do.
Okay, so I started off as a contemporary and ballet dancer, and that was my background. Quickly became really interested in dance therapy and in process work, which led me to fall in love with craniosacral therapy, which is all about body-mind work. So that's kind of a brief background of how I got here. And I do the work I do now, which is often focused on the gut and emotional health, because from my own experience and experience of people coming into my practice of 25 years now, I want to help people not to feel isolated with what they're going through and help bring them out of shame and secrecy so they can grow from their experience and talk about it and not be judged and be supported.
Yeah. And I know you talk a lot about your own journey through recognizing how integrated or connected our gut, which you call our second brain, and our brain are connected, and how both early childhood trauma, but traumas in our lives can impact our gut. So I'd love to talk about that, but I think probably for the listeners, it would be really important for them to understand what craniosacral therapy is, because I know that until I met our mutual friend, Catherine, I didn't even know what craniosacral therapy was.
Sure. So craniosacral therapy is a light touch form of body work that really addresses and offers release to restrictions and tension patterns in the central nervous system and everything to do with that. So head, neck, spine, brain, spinal cord, dural membrane, fluids, all of that is in this very important core system in the body. That's what we work with. And of course, a really important aspect of that, which you've touched on, is the autonomic nervous system, which is about how we respond to stress, where we get our resilience from, if we have any, our fight, flight, freeze. So that's what we're working with, a core system in the body to offer that person opportunity to release some of the layers of stress that may have built up from early childhood onwards.
Yeah, because so much, and you discuss this in your book, and also it's now being researched more thoroughly that trauma really gets stored in your body, right?
Absolutely. And our whole emotional history is written in our body, and an awful lot of it is written into our gut, as I've discovered. And, we have wonderful research like the ACE study, which I'm sure you've heard of, the Adverse Childhood Experience study.
Yes.
Huge study, done in America. Lots of brilliant books have come out of that. Childhood Disrupted, The Deepest Well. Such an important thing to understand that early childhood difficult experience and challenge without maybe some mitigating factors can have a lifelong impact on our mental and physical health. So it's really a bit trite perhaps, but true to say that our biography becomes our biology.
Well, and so much of that encoding in our body can happen even before we're old enough or even out of the womb, right?
Absolutely, because as a baby, an embryo, fetus in the womb, we are going to experience the difference in cortisol levels in our mother, how she's feeling, tension patterns in her body. So all of that we're taking on board and absorbing. And of course, the younger we are, from in utero or early years, we can't talk about it, we can't ask questions, we probably don't understand what's happening. So that experience becomes deeply encoded in our body at cellular level, because what else are we going to do with it?
It's so true. And so you share a lot of your journey in your book, which I found very helpful in sort of kind of connecting. It's making it feel real, because oftentimes when you're reading about more brain science and biology, it's hard to kind of connect that to ourselves. But
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind sharing some of your personal story around, recognizing the connection between the gut and your physical and mental health.
Absolutely not.
And trauma.
And that's why I put it in the book, because I didn't want to write or read a textbook, and I wanted people to feel less isolated and to be able to engage with, and I hoped that some of it might resonate, and as it turns out it does, which is great. So I had some very challenging times as a child and teenager, and recognizing, looking back now with the knowledge that I have about the gut and brain science, I can see where my gut responded in terms of going in very much to freeze and dissociation as I look back. And then more recently, well, it's about 15 years ago, I had I nearly drowned in a scuba diving accident, and my gut was really badly impacted by that. I had chronic late onset post-traumatic stress disorder, but as I like to call it, actually post-traumatic gut. And of course, PTSD diagnosis was created by psychiatrists and psychologists. So they don't often mention the gut, but in my personal experience and lots of people I work with, the gut is nearly always impacted. It responds to how safe or not we feel. So I have had a lot of personal experience about my gut being in a state of fight and flight, in freeze, and all the associated difficulties, whether it's been constipation, diarrhea, nausea, cramping, all those horrible things that are debilitating in the middle of the night when you're panicking, you don't know what's going on, and you don't feel able to talk about it, because people don't always want to hear about your bowel movements. Especially not when they're always going wrong, and then if you talk about that and your emotional health in the same sentence, I used to find there was rather awkward silence.
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't want that for people. That was the most difficult and painful and sad thing for me, was feeling alone with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, and as you described in the book, you had this horrifying experience while scuba diving, but the post-traumatic sort of experience, the reaction didn't happen until much later, which can happen for people, right? I mean, like, it doesn't always happen right away.
No, that's right. And in fact, it was about 3 months later that it kind of hit me like a truck one night, bam. And when it happens like that, it's usually a little bit trickier to deal with than if you get an immediate response to one event.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So obviously I've done a lot of work on that, and I'm a huge believer in post-traumatic growth as well. Not just surviving, but actually thriving as a result of these experiences.
Yeah. Well, I think when we do the work to grow after the post-traumatic the traumatic experience, that there really can be an amazing amount of growth personally, working through that.
Absolutely. And I think the validation of just what you've said has come to me as a result of my book going out there, because I've had so many messages from people saying that resonated with me. This allowed me to recognize that people I'd never met from all over the world, really.
Wow.
And that's just been so wonderful to hear, because that was my intention, but you never know till you put something out there, right? So, I'm just going to say it, and then let's see what happens.
Well, I thought it was interesting that, and I forget what kind of doctor it was, but somebody who you met with after all of, after the scuba dive, and he was basically like saying that, it's not getting back to who you were, but it's finding out where you are and who you are now after this.
Absolutely. Now, that was a cardiologist that I saw who was wonderful, and that was one of the single most helpful things anybody ever said to me at that time, because I felt, and I think people often do, like I was somehow less and failing because I wasn't the person I was before, and I was comparing and struggling. But then when I came away from that, I thought, well, of course, I've integrated this, or am trying to integrate this big experience. That's part of me, part of my material, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. Of course I'm going to be different, and I don't quite know what that looks like now. But then I went forward with curiosity, feeling empowered, as opposed to feeling helpless about trying to go backwards. So I've always remembered that, and I try and pass that on to people as well when they come to me.
Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about how our brain and why our brains and our guts, what we're learning now about how interconnected they really are.
Sure. So I got interested in this from my own experience and from all the research that was coming about, and I realized that we needed to work with the brain in the gut, not just the brain in the head, which is what I'd been doing to date. So the brain in the head is connected by the superhighway that is otherwise known as the vagus nerve into the gut, the enteric nervous system, which is buried in the gut. And a lot of people have heard about this gut-brain axis. So our vagus nerve is very much about our ability to rest and our ability to digest. But more than that, that's one big connection. The gut actually, with its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain now, has actually does a lot of stuff, makes its own decisions without talking to the brain in the head.
Which is so amazing, isn't it? I don't know. That just blows me away.
Yes. So it has its own complete neural circuitry, which has nothing to do with the brain in the head. And so it's much more complicated than we thought. It's not just the gut-brain axis. And then you have another level of complexity, which is the microbiome, the gut bacteria, who talk to each other and talk to every aspect of the second brain. And those conversations sometimes refer to the brain in the head and sometimes not at all. So you have a very complex system. And what I've discovered is that it can be a place where we, as I did as a child, dissociate from. It's very easy to dissociate from a place that makes its own decisions.
Oh, yeah, I would bet.
Yeah, so when you've been through some kind of very challenging or traumatic event, be that emotional or surgical or infection or disease, whatever it might be, we can really cut ourselves off from what's happening in the gut, somehow not be able to connect with and understand what's going on with it, which is what happened to me. And so a lot of the work for me is recognizing that we need to reconnect and befriend the gut on every level, physically, emotionally, mentally, to move forwards. Sorry, I think I've drifted off point a bit there, but
no. But I mean, to me, it's all on point. But yeah, I understand. Like what I often see in, I'm a therapist, so what I see in session with clients who have sort of become disconnected from the gut, one can be like just an no awareness or ability to really take care of their gut, like eating healthy, drinking when they're thirsty, going to the bathroom when they need to, that there is such a disconnection that, and I think a lot of it too, I mean, it's from traumatic experiences because that they weren't really taught how to tune in and take care, or it was safer to just shut all of that out.
I agree, and I think safety is the bottom line for a lot of this, and I think that you're quite right, and people dissociate. Usually it's protective. For me, I think it was protective, and I tried in so many ways to connect back with my gut and found it difficult, and I think people do, even if they want to, which is why I've developed the work that I do to assist people as far as possible.
Yeah. And so how does craniosacral therapy help with that? And I think you also talked about somatic, I'm forgetting the name.
Somatic emotional release.
Yes. So how do they help?
Yes, so somato-emotional release is kind of what it says on the tin. It's release of emotions from the body. And that's a set of dialoguing techniques which we incorporate into the craniosacral work where it's appropriate for that person. So it's not a form of counselling or psychological work. It's a form of supporting and facilitating people's experience of the history and the tissues with just open questions and general support. Often imagery, dialoguing might be part of that. So with the work, I've developed a set of techniques to work hands-on with the gut and to facilitate that process of any history that there is there. Because until that somatic history, a history in the body, maybe a tension and strain pattern in the colon or some other part, is acknowledged, is become aware of, and maybe some of that emotion, if there is some, is let go of, there won't be a physical release in the tissue. So the work I've done is to develop techniques to work more specifically with the second brain, not just the brain in the head, in those ways.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful that there will be more and more information about how much stress, trauma, feeling, overwhelm, anxiety impacts our internal digestive system. I know that oftentimes clients will come to me with, I always feel nauseous when I get anxious, or I can't eat anything or I eat too much, that I'm just constantly just putting things in my mouth but not recognizing feeling full or, and they're so connected.
Yeah, it's huge. And So I'm hoping that, well, like you, with the work that I do, to raise awareness and give people information and give them opportunities through my work and the therapists that I teach, and through also do some yoga for digestive health work, to help people befriend their gut. Because I used to get so frustrated with it and cross with it, and that, of course, wasn't helpful, although it was human. And so it's like, oh no, not again, for goodness sake, why can't you just... And that was hardly going to help me listen to those big messages it was giving me. So I think, again, and I'm sure for you too, it's about that safe space, isn't it?
Yes.
Being able to feel safe enough to go into that, to connect, to listen, and
well, and as you said, to be curious, right? Instead of like, oh no, it's like, oh, hey there.
Yes, exactly. Which is what I would do now, but I spent years being cross with my gut.
Yeah. Well, and I think no, and I think that's such an important part of, I think, any sort of mental distress. So coming through trauma, that sort of being curious about what you are experiencing and what, why is this showing up now? And maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe there isn't a clear, like, this is why, but having that curiosity around, okay, you're here now, but where do we go from here?
That's right. And even if we don't, because I don't always know why, but I might tune in and say, well, now what do you need? What would you need at the moment?
Yeah.
Do I need to take a bit of pressure off? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to drink some water? Do I need to go and do a bit of yoga? What do I need? What do you need, my gut? And what do we need together?
Yeah, so great. And I just appreciate so much that you were willing to share so much in the book about your own experience. I know it's hard at times to share trauma and be open and honest about how it's impacted you, but I think it's so important too. Being a trauma survivor myself, I think it's really important.
I think it really is, because otherwise, again, it comes down to isolation, shame, and secrecy, and I don't want that for anybody. And I think it's another thing I think is really interesting is that when you look at the Eastern philosophies, this lower dantian, the lower part of the abdomen, is their center for emotional and spiritual growth. And we think of it as often as a tube the poo goes through. Now there's a dichotomy, if there ever was one.
Yeah, right.
And so in my book, that's why I've got the poetry about the gut in and other things. I like to, and when I'm teaching, is to bring people back to that sense of wonder about this incredible place where we really respond to the outside world instantly, and a sense of wonder of its beauty and complexity, and to honor it and listen, rather than just thinking of it as this place where food goes in and feces come out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing too that just the health of our gut on its own can impact how we're feeling too.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's most of our serotonin is manufactured and stored in the gut. So if our gut's in a state of fight and flight or freeze, that impacts on the serotonin levels, which impacts on our anxiety or well-being and sleep.
Yeah.
It's massive. And in fact, there's a wonderful psychiatrist that you've probably heard of, Professor Emmerin Mayer.
I have not.
Right. I think you would love his stuff. He says that the time has come for psychiatrists to treat the second brain as well as the one in the head.
Wow.
Because they're so connected. And there's another guy, John Cryan, I think he's a psychiatrist, and he says that every single neurological, what's the word I'm looking for, event that happens in us is accompanied by the gut microbiota. So, it's part of everything that we experience and feel, and yet often disconnected. So when you take both those things into consideration, you realize, as you and I do, how important it is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think it speaks to, I think is finally evolving is this sort of treating the whole body versus this symptom, that symptom, take this medication for this. It's looking at the whole system.
Absolutely. And the more we know about it, the more complex it is, because now you've got the microbiota gut-brain axis. It's not just the gut-brain axis.
Yes.
You've got all the independence of the gut as well as the connection with the gut bacteria in the brain and the head. You've got the complexity of the cells and the layers of the intestine in there, which are extraordinary. So all of these aspects are impacted by our life from in utero onwards, and yours will be different to everybody else's, and so is mine. So you cannot possibly know what somebody needs, can you?
Right.
You can never have a truly holistic approach and respond to that person without an agenda.
So if people wanted more resources or tips to better take care of their gut, are there, besides your book, or including your book, how do they find those?
Great. So the book's helpful, obviously. Also, there's my YouTube channel, if it's okay for me to mention that.
Absolutely.
So that's called The Emotional Gut. And I've only just started it. It's got a gut breath meditation on it.
Oh, cool.
Add things to it. So that's a resource people can click on. It's 10 minutes. And the idea of that is to help people tune in to listen and befriend their guts. Very simple to do.
Nice.
That's another resource. Also, just simple things. Learning to breathe is helpful. Breathe into the belly. Going for a walk in the fresh air is amazing. And your gut bacteria love to go for a walk every day for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I bet they do, right?
So take your bacteria for a walk. And I have this great image of them all on little leads, like tiny little dogs, which just is maybe too much insight into my brain, and going along behind me as I go for a walk.
That was exactly what I was picturing. I have a dog too, so yes, taking them all outside to play.
Yes. And anything playful, anything that makes you smile and feel happy. So for me, it's singing and yoga, going for a walk by the river, whatever it is that makes you feel happy, whatever that might be doing. Probably you mentioned that you like doing some dance. All these different things will impact on the gut, because if we can get into that parasympathetic, that more relaxed state, the body can heal, we're open to the messages. And that applies to anything. It doesn't matter what's going on with us. But the gut will respond really well to all those things. Of course, clean diet. Please don't eat sugar. That's probably the worst thing you can do for your gut.
Yeah. So how do people find you, Nikki?
Well, they can find me on YouTube by subscribing to my channel. They can email me. So I can give you my email.
Okay.
Which is Nikki, Nikki, .cranio, CRANIO, @gmail.com.
Awesome.
And there's my website, NikkiKenward.com. So in all those ways, I'm eminently reachable. And I love to hear from people from their experience, because I'm learning all the time from what people are experiencing themselves and what they've discovered.
Nice.
Well, I so appreciate your taking the time, and you're across the Atlantic Ocean, right?
I
From
am.
me.
I'm in Marlow, just outside London in the UK.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time and being with us today. I will include all of the contact information in the show notes on the episode so people can find you and find your book and your YouTube channel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and it makes me very happy that you are also spreading the word.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Nikki. I know that, our gut health and our brain health are very interactive, that they, if our gut is in distress, that can cause us emotional distress, and that our emotional distress can impact our digestive system. But if you're more interested in why all of that is the way it is, you can check out Nikki's book, It's All in Your Gut. Let Your Second Brain Guide You to Optimal Health. She goes into great detail about the biology of all of this, and it's pretty interesting and was very eye-opening for me. But you can find that in the show notes, a link to how to buy her book. I hope you'll check out her other resources, and I hope that this coming week you will take care of your gut. Tune in, listen, get curious to what your gut needs. Ciao for now from this woman warrior.
Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Woman Worriers podcast. Music was written and performed by Andy Cush. If you'd like more information on this episode, you can find the show notes, the resources shared today, and links to the guests' profiles at womanwarriors.com.